Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to AMC Mail Bag, the all mailbag show here on AMC Movie News, where all we do is take our viewer questions from you guys. My name is John Campion. I'm the editor-in-chief of AMC Movie News, and I'm so glad you decided to join us on this Sunday. Getting ready for some football. Going to watch a little bit of football later, so either you're watching this while football is on or after your football. I'm very excited. First football Sunday of the year. I'm a big sports guy. Like, my number one passion is movies. But after that, sports. I'm actually a huge sports guy. I love sports. I think if I didn't get into movie punditry, I actually think I would have pursued being on sports talk radio. I think that's what I would have done otherwise. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have watched me for a while know, because most of my analogies are usually sports analogies. And I know that irritates some people, but it's, you got to go with what you know, right? Anyway, hey, listen, we're doing something very different today. Now, for those of you who watched AMC Mailbag yesterday, you know that we are beta testing a new feature on AMC Mailbag, which is taking calls. Like, instead of just taking emails, and we're always going to take emails, but we thought we'd beta test taking calls. And apparently a lot of you guys liked the fact that we took some calls yesterday. So I encouraged you on yesterday's show that, hey, if you want to try calling in, we're going to do calls again on tomorrow's show. I thought we'd get like 30 or 40 calls. We ended up getting over 200 calls. So I am clearly not going to be able to get to even, a quarter of the amount of calls that came in. But I thought, you know what, let's just do something a little bit different for today. For today and today only, since so many of you guys called, all I'm going to do is try to, really rapid fire through a whole bunch of the calls that you guys sent in. Now, normally on AMC Mailbag, I'll try to do anywhere between 6 and 9 questions. So today, I'm going to take a shot, although we're going to be a little bit more rapid fire style. I'm going to take a shot at getting through 20 questions and all phone calls. All phone calls, so 20 calls to try to make up for some of the ones we did. Now, this is not the way things will normally go. I think even once we get AMC Mailbag Daily going, we'll probably alternate between, okay, now let's take a call. Now let's take an email question. Now let's take a call. Now let's take an email question. But just for today, I thought, you know what? So many of you guys have been supportive, which, by the way, thank you so much. Like, I try these new things. You guys give me the confidence to try new things because you support so much of what we do. And you guys seem to really understand that when we try something and it doesn't work, we drop it and we move on to the next thing. And you guys are always really supportive, and I really want to thank you for that. And that gives us the confidence to try new things like this call-in feature. So thank you so much for being supportive and calling in. We got a whole bunch of calls to get to. So let's get going. Let us start with the first call of the day. Let's check it out.
Hi, my name is Colin, and I have a question. What do you think would have happened if Empire Strikes Back failed, taking into consideration that the first one did good and the second one didn't do good? Like, what if the story wasn't strong enough? What if Yoda didn't work? Stuff like that. Do you think we would have gotten Return of the Jedi, or like, what do you think would have happened? Love to hear your thoughts, and yeah, see ya.
That's a great question. I mean, what happens to not just Return of the Jedi, but the whole legacy of Star Wars had Empire Strikes Back not been the brilliant masterpiece that it is? Because, Star Wars to me, and you guys have heard me say this before, Star Wars to me is life and blood and breath and sustenance and everything. Star Wars to me is everything. But like, even people who aren't big Star Wars fans acknowledge, you talk to any filmmaker in Hollywood, they'll acknowledge Star Wars changed the film industry. And it inspired an entire new generation of filmmakers. And most filmmakers today will list Star Wars amongst the most influential films and properties and franchises of all time. But what happens to that entire legacy? What happens to that entire franchise, that entire dynasty, if you will? What happens to kids like me if Empire Strikes Back comes out and it's really bad? What if Empire Strikes Back was The Hangover Part 2? I mean, yeah, Star Wars was a cultural phenomenon. It changed pop culture. It ushered in a new era of the blockbuster film and all that stuff. But Star Wars becomes a fluke, doesn't it? Doesn't Star Wars become a fluke if Empire Strikes Back comes out and nobody buys into Yoda and nobody buys into, all this other stuff? Oh, Vader's now Luke's father, please. Like, what happens if all these things they tried doesn't work? Well, number one, I already kind of mentioned it. Then Star Wars is looked at as a fluke. They'll see it as just a lightning in a bottle. George Lucas, this kid, just kind of got lucky with it. And then would have come the second guessing. Well, they should have, other than Alec Guinness, they should have gotten a more experienced and well-known cast. Like, who's this Carrie Fisher? Who's this Harrison Ford? Who's this Mark Hamill? Why didn't they get like tried and true actors? I'm sure we would have heard a lot of that at the time. Well, especially if we were taking modern movie punditry and put it back into the 1970s. But then I think a lot of, movies and pieces of fiction that were created as a result of the influence of Star Wars, that all disappears. I'm probably not the major film fan that I am today because of that. I mean, it really would have changed the landscape. We certainly never would have gotten the prequels, and maybe that's an argument why Empire Strikes Back should have sucked. We certainly never would have got the prequels. And I don't think we would have gotten Return of the Jedi. Now, you can make the argument, but the momentum of the first Star Wars and the first Star Wars making so much money and all that kind of stuff, yeah, but I think that was a different era at the time. Had Empire Strikes Back come out and not just been bad, but if it also bombed. So let's say Empire Strikes Back comes out and is number one bad and number two bombs, doesn't make money, loses the studio money. I think especially at the time, that's an automatic turn, throw the switch to off. We ain't doing no more of this. And I think that's probably what would have happened. It would have been a catastrophic shift in the cultural temperature, especially of pop culture. It would have changed everything. This is one of those Bill and Ted moments. You could make a Bill and Ted movie where all of a sudden our culture is completely different and Bill and Ted are like, whoa, what happened? Why is everything so different? And then you get... Rufus, the ghost of Rufus comes back and says, somebody went back in time and changed it so that Empire Strikes Back sucked. No! So now Bill and Ted have to get in their time machine and go back in time and fix it so that Empire Strikes Back is the piece of genius that it is to set everything right again. There you go. There's a new movie, Hollywood. All right, let's move on to the next question.
Movie like this for you.
Oh, there you go. Let's try this again.
Hey, this is Connor Nielsen in Portland, Oregon. I just finished watching Stanley Kubrick's The Killing, and I just realized that it's one of those movies that I really, really love, but I've never found anyone else who really sees it. But when I do find that person, they also really, really like it. Is there a movie like this for you? Because, I don't know, I seem to find movies like The Killing and Metropolis are those kind of movies for me. Anyways, thank you very much. Take care. Great show.
Well, thanks a lot for the question. Great question. The Killing, it's great. A lot of people have not seen The Killing, and The Killing is great. A lot of people have seen Metropolis. Not the majority of people, but more people than you might think have seen Metropolis. But it's a great question. That movie that you've seen and you love, but like nobody else has, but when you do meet somebody who has, they love it too. Two, and these are cheeseball films, but whatever. Two films that really stand out to me that are like that are movies that I don't run into a lot of people who've seen them, especially the first one. And you've heard me talk about this film. Megaforce, where the lead character's name is Ace. I love Megaforce. It was G.I. Joe. Basically, it was a G.I. Joe movie before we ever had a G.I. Joe movie. That's kind of what Megaforce was. Megaforce was this... all the international community got together and pooled their resources to make one elite military force that could respond to terrorist threats around the world, and that's Megaforce. And anyway, it's such a guilty pleasure, such a cornball pleasure, and no one's ever seen it. But when I do come across people, and I don't even think it's available on DVD or anything today, but when I do come across people that have seen it, they also go, yeah, man, Megaforce! So if you get the chance somehow to see Megaforce, get a bag of Doritos and a bottle of Coke and just sit back and enjoy yourself for like an hour and a half or 2 hours, however long it was. It's been a long time since I've seen it. The other one for me is like Metropolis. More people have seen it than Megaforce. But I'm still surprised today how many people have not seen it. And that's the Ben Stiller, Hank Azaria, William H. Macy, Garofalo, Pee Wee Herman film, Mystery Men. Mystery Men to me is just chock full of genius. To me, the film is genius in its silliness, in its ridiculousness, in it's a kind of like a snark commentary on the modern comic book thing. The funny thing is, now with the new era of comic book movies, Mystery Men is as relevant now as it has ever been. Go and watch the Mystery Men. If for no other reason that the villain in the film is Casanova Frankenstein, played by Jeffrey Rush, who's brilliant in it as Casanova Frankenstein. You got Greg Kinnear as Captain Amazing, who's so good in it. And in the couple of scenes where you got Captain Amazing and Casanova Frankenstein in the same scene, even though they're minor characters in it, is just brilliant. But I'm always saddened to find out how many people have not seen Mystery Men. And I'm telling you, it is like I said, because of the modern comic book age, it is relevant today, maybe even more relevant, maybe even more poignant today than it was when it first came out. You got the Blue Raja, the Shoveler, Mr. Furious, the Bowler, the Spleen. I mean, just watch the movie. Those are the two movies to me that I find a lot of people haven't seen, but when I do find people who have seen them, they love them just as much as me because they're difficult not to love. All right, let's move on to the next call.
Hey, John. My name is Patrick. I'm from Canada, like you. I have a question about movies that have, quote-unquote, odd premises taking themselves seriously. I read a lot of commentary on movies that I love, like Godzilla, Man of Steel, and other big movies, that these movies take themselves too seriously and are bad because of it. People seem to think that these movies should be more fun and not so serious. My question is, what's wrong with self-seriousness? What's your opinion on it? Thanks, bye.
I think it really all depends on the film, right? I mean, look, I think there were a lot of people that were saying, if we zoom back a bunch of years just before Christopher Nolan was announced as the director of the new Batman franchise, and they just said, okay, they're going to do a new Batman movies. I think you probably would have had people out there that saying, okay, just make sure you don't take yourself too seriously. They'll think back to the Adam West Batman TV show, pow, kaplooey, bam, golly, Batman, all that kind of stuff. And they'll say, you can't take Batman too seriously. It's a comic book now. It's about a guy who puts on a rubber mask, runs around town in a cape. I mean, can't take it too seriously, right? Well, then Christopher Nolan came along, gave us Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, and The Dark Knight Rises, and it's like, no, you can take it seriously. You can approach this material with a serious tone and have it really work. I've yet to find. I mean, I've had movies that I've criticized that this movie did take itself too seriously for what it was, but I don't know that I've ever found a movie. And maybe if I take some more time to really think about it, I'll come up with a couple. But I've never really, off the top of my head, can think of a movie that I said, this movie specifically didn't work because it took itself seriously. It all depends on how you approach the film and how you approach material. If you decide you want to go with a serious tone with Superman, okay, you can do that, but you got to make sure you do certain other things around it to support the serious tone. You want to do Godzilla and make it serious tone and make it feel realistic, okay, that's fine. But then you got to do certain things around it to make sure you support its serious tone. And if you do that, then I think you're fine. I liked Godzilla. I know John Schnepp here on AMC Movie News, he was kind of frustrated with the fact that every time that Godzilla was about to fight a monster, they cut away. Like, okay, Godzilla and this guy are about to fight. Oh, now let's go to some TV footage. Or let's cut away back to San Francisco. Or let's cut away to that. And it did that repeatedly. And that, even as somebody who liked Godzilla, that was frustrating to me too. But I'm one of the people who liked the Godzilla film. Actually, I had a lot of fun with it. And one of the reasons I liked it was because of the serious tone of it. Look, could they have done Godzilla as a campy film? Yes, you could have, and it could have worked that way as long as you built the rest of the film around supporting the campy kind of feel of the film. That could have worked. It would have been a very different film, obviously. But I liked it for what it was. Man of Steel, look, I've gone on and on. I'm not going to go into it all again, but you know that I loved Man of Steel. It was my favorite comic book movie that year. 4 major comic book movies, 3 of them were Marvel-based, 1 of them was DC, and that DC one, Man of Steel, to me was the best by far. So it really all depends on, you start with what's the tone of the film going to be, but I don't think the movie is then determined whether it's going to be good or bad based on what tone you want. It's then how do you then structure your movie around that tone to make it work. So I think serious tone is totally fine and works just fine, so I'm not worried about it at all. All right, let's go to the next question.
Hello, John. This is Pablo. After hearing that the tone for Shazam will be less serious and fun, I was initially worried because I, like many others, was let down by Green Lantern. Is it okay to be worried, or am I just crazy? Thank you.
Well, Pablo, I don't think you're crazy. So this kind of goes off the other thing, right? One question is, why do people say movies suck if they're serious? And now it's like, hey, I'm worried because this one looks like it's going to be light and fun. Once again, don't worry about the tone. Pablo, you mentioned the Green Lantern movie. I'll say this again. The Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds was a disappointment. There's no doubt. But I don't think the lightheartedness of it is what the problem with the film was. I don't think that was a problem. Ryan Reynolds was certainly not the problem of that film. I thought Ryan Reynolds was really good in it. I thought the humor was nice too. But here's the thing. In the last question we talked about, hey, you want to make a serious movie? That's fine. Just structure your film appropriately around it so that works. Green Lantern blew that. Like, they decided they wanted a Green Lantern that was going to be more lighthearted, almost more like a Flash character, almost more like a Spider-Man character than Hal Jordan. But that's fine. You want to go light in tone, light and funny, because that plays to Ryan Reynolds' strengths. That's fine. That can work. And I actually found much of the humor in the Green Lantern actually worked for me. And I liked Ryan Reynolds as Hal Jordan and all that kind of stuff. But the problem is that they started with this tone. We're going to be light. We're going to be fun. But then they did not build the movie around that tone properly. You got like a floating diarrhea cloud as your main villain, and Parallax could have been a great villain. I actually would have preferred if they'd done more like the comic book origin, the original kind of story of Parallax, where if you know the original story of Parallax, before they started adding things to it, it was that Hal Jordan was actually Parallax. But anyway, that's a story for sweaty nerds around the campfire. So anyway, they had this really a badly conceived villain, and then a sub-villain with the brain. Like, all this stuff was counterintuitive to that lighthearted tone they want to go for. Now, look, just because you're doing lighthearted tone, that doesn't mean you can't have moments of seriousness, and doesn't mean you have to go all silly slapstick, but be mindful that, hey, we're introducing this tone. Let's not make that completely stand juxtaposed against everything else in the film. And that's what they kind of did. There were a lot of problems with the Green Lantern, but I don't think the decision to go light and lighthearted was one of the problems. Also remember, Nick, Green Lantern, a lighthearted film, didn't work, but I don't think it didn't work because it was lighthearted. But look at the #1 box office movie domestically of the summer, of the year. Guardians of the Galaxy. That is a light. Guardians of the Galaxy is a brilliant example, actually, of a film that is light and funny, and had some great energy to it and humor in it, and it built its moments of seriousness around it and its dangers around it. It built it all properly to support up that tone they decided they wanted to have in the film. So Guardians of the Galaxy is a lighthearted, fun film, and it worked. So I like to think that when they talk about Shazam and they say we're going to go for a light, fun tone, I like to think that they're doing that more in the style of a Guardians of the Galaxy than a Hangover Part 2. Some people, when they hear fun, funny, lighthearted humor, they think, oh, they're going to go for Meatballs. They're going to go for Dumb and Dumber. They're going to go for... No. There's difference. There's slapstick, silly comedy, and then there's lighthearted humor. And I think Guardians of the Galaxy is a great example of that. So I wouldn't worry about it. No. So to me, especially if you're going to have a character like The Rock, if you're going to have Dwayne The Rock Johnson in a Shazam movie, I think it behooves you to have a lighthearted tone a little bit. But once again, that doesn't mean there's no seriousness. That doesn't mean it doesn't have real consequences and implications. Guardians of the Galaxy did it. Guardians of the Galaxy worked. And I think Shazam can work just as well with a lighthearted tone. Shazam may suck. But if it does end up sucking, it's not going to be because they went with a serious tone or they went with a lighthearted tone. It's going to be about how do they build the movie around the tone they decide on. So let's see how that goes. All right, let's move on to the next call.
Hi, this is Andrew Johnson. I'm curious. Why is there a lot of hate for Zack Snyder? I always associate him as sort of like, he's on par with Christopher Nolan. Like, there's so much overhype for these two directors. Like, one is bashed and one is hyped. Am I missing something? Should they wait at least 20 films under their belt until they actually get their praise, or am I overstating it? Thanks, and take care. Bye.
You're not the only person to bring that up. Okay, let's start with the Zack Snyder thing. I think Zack Snyder, for whatever reason, is getting far more hate than he deserves. Number one, 300 was great. We all forget how really well directed 300 is. 300 could have been a big steamy mess, man. That movie could have very easily become just a ridiculous, spoofy, kind of takes itself too seriously, going back to the other question, kind of film that just could have gone wrong a million different ways, but instead it was beautifully handled, and Zack Snyder's vision brought it out beautifully. Nobody ever talks about that animated film that Zack Snyder directed, which was The Owls of Gaul, which I thought was really nice, especially visually. Visually, it was just one of the most beautifully done animated films I've ever seen. And the pure visual, that's a credit to the animators. But the direction, the cinematography, that's in the director, and I think he did a great job with that. Sucker Punch was a beautiful movie to look at if you watch the movie on mute. That movie sucked. No getting around it. And Ann and I have a friend of ours who's actually one of the main stars of that film, but the movie sucked. Gorgeous though, like it's absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. Like I said, you put that movie on the screen, put it on mute, and just make up your own dialogue in your head to what the story is. It's a great film. I thought Man of Steel was fantastic. I know some people, like almost half of the people out there, were underwhelmed by it. For me, it worked on every level. It just clicked on every level, so I think it was great. So to me, Zack Snyder, I don't understand why he get a lot of hate. Oh, yeah, then there's Watchmen. A lot of people think Watchmen is a masterpiece. A lot of people didn't like it at all. I'm one of the people that I didn't like Watchmen. But I know Dennis really likes it. I know Schnepp thinks it's like just a fantastic comic book film. So there are people out there who like it, people out there who don't. The point is here is this. I think Zack Snyder is a director you can take a chance on. He's shown that he can drop the ball, but he's shown that he can really knock it out of the park too. So I really don't understand the growing sense of hatred for Zack Snyder at this point at all. At all. I think he's shown he can knock it out of the park, so he's a director I think that's a pretty decent bet to trust with a film property. It's not guaranteed to work, but not. Now, as far as the Christopher Nolan thing goes, you make one great film, that could just be lightning in a bottle. That could be totally pure dumb luck. You make two great films in a row, you might be able to see that just as a lucky streak. It's like, okay, you got on a short, hot streak with two films, whatever. You make three great films in a row, suddenly now you have to start looking at, hey, this is a pattern. Three is a pattern of excellence. I mean, yeah, M. Night Shyamalan, okay. He made Sixth Sense, maybe that was lucky. Then he made Unbreakable. Is that the one? Is that the title of the film with the Die Hard boy? I think it's Unbreakable. Anyway, this is a really good film. I don't like it as much as most people, but even I think it's really quite good. So there, okay, he got two. He's on a lucky streak. But then we saw after two, his films just started to... Even though I like Signs. I think I like Signs more than most people did. But even though I liked Signs, it was a decline. Right? Sixth Sense, Unbreakable, Signs, and then it just kind of falls off the cliff with all the other trash he started putting out. Whether it's Lady in the Water, whether it's that recent Will Smith film he did. I believe it's After Earth. That was just terrible. Then he did that one with Marky Mark where the trees, plants are the enemies, and just it just became. The Village was also a huge disappointment. I mean, so hey, 1 or 2, hey, lightning bottle, you got lucky. Number 2, okay, you just got on a hot streak. But once you get to 3 in a row, you have to start thinking there's a pattern here. Christopher Nolan, he has yet to make a bad film. And here's the thing. I think Christopher Nolan's worst film is Dark Knight Rises. And even I like Dark Knight Rises. It's the weakest of all the Batman films. It's clearly the worst film he's ever made. But a film that I like is the worst thing he's done. That's how good Christopher Nolan is. Whether you're talking Memento, you're talking Batman Begins, you're talking Insomnia, you're talking The Prestige, you're talking Inception, now you got Interstellar coming out, then you got The Dark Knight. I mean, now we're beyond the 1 or 2 lucky hot streak. Now we're into 6, 7, and 8 films, especially with Interstellar coming out. This is clearly not a fluke. We are clearly well beyond a fluke. Christopher Nolan is the real deal. Now, I have said before, like some people have this question has come up on AMC Movie Talk before, where, well, do you put Christopher Nolan on the Mount Rushmore then of directors? And I've said no. You don't put him up there yet. Why? Because you put other guys up there right now who have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years, who have shown consistently over their careers a consistency of excellence over decades. So you put Martin Scorsese up there. Some people would put Stanley Kubrick up there. Obviously, Steven Spielberg belongs up there. Francis Ford Coppola, perhaps. Anyway, and Alfred Hitchcock. So I'm going to say that no, the hype with Christopher Nolan is completely deserved. He's well beyond the lucky streak kind of thinking. He's well beyond it being a fluke. Once you get into 4, 5, 6, 7 films in a row that are all just really, really good, now you're into clearly this guy's the real deal. But I'm not willing to put him on the Mount Rushmore directors yet. I'm not sure I have him in my top 10 of all time yet. But if he keeps going the way he's going, even if he drops off a little bit, he will get into that upper echelon and into that discussion of the pantheon of the great directors of all time. I agree, give him more than 7 or 8 films to get there, but I do think that we've seen enough from him that we can say this ain't just hype, ladies and gentlemen. Christopher Nolan's the real deal. And let's see what happens with Interstellar. I can't wait to see that one. All right, let's get to the next call.
Hi guys, my name is Joe Vittori. I'm a longtime fan. My question is, assuming that they're going to do a remake or reboot of Indiana Jones, who would be your top 3 actors to play? Mine, I think, would be either Bradley Cooper, Matthew McConaughey, or Michael Fassbender, with maybe Chris Pratt coming in as a close 4th. But I'd love to hear what you think. Thanks for taking my call. Bye.
Here's the thing. Well, first of all, I like all those names. Matthew McConaughey, Bradley Cooper. I've been a big Bradley Cooper fan before it was cool to be a Bradley Cooper fan. I've been a big Bradley Cooper fan ever since he was on Alias. That's how long I've been a Bradley Cooper fan. How hipster of me to say. And obviously I'm a big fan of Chris Pratt. But it feels like whenever any franchise comes up now and you say, it's kind of like the director thing, right? It's like, who should direct this? Everybody wants to ask for about 2 years. Everybody wants to ask, Peter Jackson should direct that no matter what it was. Now, then you bring up, who should direct this? And everybody says, Christopher Nolan should direct that. And now it's, like Lord. There are always these trendy names. And it feels like whenever you talk about who should play this, right now it's always either Bradley Cooper, Matthew McConaughey, and just recently is becoming Christopher Pratt. And there was remember a couple weeks ago, there's that picture going around of Christopher Pratt dressed in an Indiana Jones thing. I don't know if he actually put on a costume just for fun or if that was photoshopped. It doesn't really matter. But I don't know that I see Christopher Pratt. I love Chris Pratt. I don't know if I see him as an Indiana Jones. I don't know if I see Matthew McConaughey as an Indiana Jones. Bradley Cooper's a name I could see there, but honestly, if they do end up rebooting Indiana Jones, a couple things I hope. Number one, I hope they put it back in the Nazi era again. To me, that's just where Indiana Jones belongs. But hey, it's cool. They want to say Indiana Jones and it's set in modern times. That's fine too. But I would like to see him in that era, fighting the Nazis and racing against the Nazis for these relics and all that kind of stuff. That's where I want to see it. But that's just me. But I would really love it if they went outside of that box. I wouldn't mind like a Jake Gyllenhaal. I wouldn't mind like maybe some smaller guys. I honestly wouldn't like take Cowboys and Aliens out of it. I really wouldn't mind seeing an Armie Hammer playing Indiana Jones. What I would like to see is not the big A-list name, but maybe a solid B-list name, like a recognizable name that we know. Because remember, when they did the original Indiana Jones, it was a recognizable name. It was Harrison Ford. I mean, he wasn't Harrison Ford yet, but we all knew him from Star Wars. He was a recognizable name. We knew him. We recognized him. So I would personally not go for a big icon A-lister right now, like the Matthew McConaughey's, Bradley Cooper's. I would go for a really good, solid B-list name and put them in there and see where we go from there. And who that name could be, there's probably 30, 40, 50 possibilities that I would be perfectly comfortable with. So let's see how that actually turns out. All right, let's get on to the next question.
Hey guys, this is Rob Gates. I am calling to ask if you guys are planning on bringing AMC Movie Talk on the road, perhaps at Comic-Con. I know you do the Masters of the Web, so perhaps you could bring that to the other Comic-Cons, like Emerald City Comic-Con. Also, I've been a subscriber since around 20,000 subscribers, so I'm very happy to see you meet 200,000.
Awesome.
Keep bringing the filthy. Have a great day.
Hey, thanks a lot for the question. Okay, so we've been getting asked a lot lately about taking AMC Movie Talk on the road and doing like a tour with it, right? Here's the thing. You know how sometimes I say when somebody asks, hey, should they turn this TV show into a movie? And I say, the fact of the matter is not enough people watch that show to make it a movie. We've had some awesome growth at AMC Movie News, like awesome growth. We're over 200,000 subscribers now, which is great. The viewership on our videos continues to go up, and it's awesome, and we're having a great time. But the reality is, we are not big enough to go on the road. I think some people watch AMC Movie Talk and think we could roll into Chicago and have 5,000 fans show up. Nah, we're not at that point. I think we could roll into Chicago and have 20 fans show up. And hey, maybe 20 fans is enough to do something like this. I don't know. I remember when we went to Kansas City. Do you remember a few months ago, like almost the whole AMC crew, we all went to Kansas City and we shot an episode of AMC Movie Talk from the AMC headquarters. That was actually a lot of fun. But I remember we got a lot of emails from fans in Kansas saying, why didn't you let us know that you were going to be here? We would have wanted to come and watch too. So maybe we would have had like 30 or some odd people and whatever. But I think there's this impression that we got 200,000 viewers. That means people are going to come out and droves to see us. Nah, they're not. If we double our size, let's see, once we get to like say, if we added a couple hundred more thousand subscribers, we get to around, I don't know, we're averaging anywhere between 30 and 50,000 views per episode of AMC Movie Talk. If we get that up to like 100,000 views, if we start averaging out about 100,000 views for AMC Movie Talk, then it's time for us to talk about going on tour. Now, as far as just taking it to a special thing like Comic-Con, yeah, we've already started talking, me and a couple of the people on the AMC crew, we've talked about, hey man, we should just do a panel at Comic-Con where it's just a live version of AMC Movie Talk. And we're going to consider that. We've talked about maybe going to New York City Comic-Con. The problem with going to Comic-Cons is that it's really expensive. Because now you're talking about a crew of 3 or 4 people at least that we got to take. So we got to travel to wherever we're going, get hotels, bring all the gear with us. It actually starts getting quite expensive. And a lot of people think that because we're affiliated with AMC, this big corporation, blah, blah, we've got all the money in the world. We don't. AMC Movie News has a budget that they give me. My guy at AMC tells me, this is how much money we have to spend this year. Spend it however you want, but it isn't all the money you got. And I prefer putting my money into our people as opposed to travel and hotels and things like that. And so it becomes cost prohibitive for us to travel to a lot of the smaller Comic-Cons, even though that would be a lot of fun. It's just we don't have the money to do it. So if we want to continue to do San Diego Comic-Con, and if we want to eventually do New York Comic-Con, it means we really don't have the option to do a lot of the smaller Comic-Cons, even though that would be a lot of fun. So that's where we're at right now. Anyway, let's get to the next call.
Hi, my name is Sabah. I love your show, watch it every day. My question is regarding the Metal Gear Solid movie adaptation. I heard that they're planning to make the movie, but haven't anything update yet. Do you guys know anything? Thanks, and keep on bringing on the filthy.
Yeah, Metal Gear Solid is actually one that's been floating around for a while. Actually, a guy I had on my AMC Masters of the Web panel at Comic-Con a couple of years ago is producer Avi Arad, who's produced a lot of the Marvel stuff. And he came out a little over 2 years ago, actually. Avi Arad came out and said, we've made a deal. We're bringing a Metal Gear Solid movie. We're going to do it with Columbia Pictures, which is one of the sub-companies of Sony. So we're going to be doing it with Columbia Pictures. And it's going to feature Snake. We're doing it. This is the way we're going. Yay. Well, that was 2 years ago. And we still have not seen anything happen. Now, about 2 months ago, word came out that things were still kind of moving. The last thing that I heard was that there's this little film that was out a little while ago called Kings of Summer. And Jordan Voight, I never know how to pronounce it, Roberts, who directed Kings of Summer, they were in talks. This is the last I heard. They were in talks with him to become the director for the film. I don't know if he ever signed, but at least that's a sign of life, that things are at least happening. But honestly, it's been over 2 years now since they announced, we're making Metal Gear Solid with Columbia Pictures. And since then, nothing. It's been radio silence until a couple of months ago when we at least heard they were talking to somebody about directing it. So, do I think it's still happening? Yes, I think it's still happening. It sounds like there's still life in it. It sounds like they're trying to do some movement on it. Maybe they've even got a director signed now, whether it's the King of the Summers guy or not, is yet to be seen. But it does sound like it's happening, but that is the last that I've heard of it up to this point. As soon as more information comes out, we'll talk about it on AMC Movie News. All right, let's go to the next call.
This is Colton Roberts. Hey, AMC Mail Bag. I was wondering if Marvel Studios ever got the rights back to X-Men or Spider-Man, how fast do you think they would make a film? So if next week they got one of those rights back, how fast would it be before we had a Marvel Studios X-Men or a Marvel Studios Spider-Man? Thank you, and keep up the good work.
Okay, so it goes without saying, I've said this a million times, Marvel's not getting X-Men back, they're not getting Spider-Man back. Who knows what happens in the future, but in the immediate future, that's not happening. But it's an interesting question. What happened? Okay, if they did, theoretically, if Marvel got X-Men back tomorrow, if they got Spider-Man back tomorrow, how fast would it be until we see one of those movies? And the answer to that goes towards why it's no point. There's no point to getting them, because if they acquired X-Men tomorrow, we would not see a Marvel-produced X-Men movie until at least 2019. Kevin Feige and Marvel already have their roadmap. They have got their story planned out, their overarching story planned out for the next 5 years. Some people say 6 years, 7 years, 8 years, but they've got their story, and each individual movie along the way plays its part in that story. They've got their plan in place. And that's why, recently when he was talking about, hey, you know what? We are looking more seriously now at Black Panther. We are looking more seriously now about a female-led superhero movie. But if that does ever happen, it's not going to suddenly get jammed into the middle of that roadmap. It's going to be put after what they've already got planned. So if they picked up Sony by some impossibility, if they picked up Spider-Man, or if they picked up X-Men tomorrow, well, tough. Fans, you're just going to have to sit and wait for 5 years until we see another one. I really honestly think that. Kevin Feige's got his plan. He's a guy who sticks to his plan, and I think that's the way it would go. So, which is another one of the reasons why I don't want to see X-Men go back to Marvel. Fox is doing just fine with X-Men. Thank you very much. They just put out a magnificent X-Men movie in X-Men Days of Future Past that is better than most of Marvel films. X-Men Days of Future Past is there might only be 2 films that Marvel has done, maybe 3, that have been as good or better than X-Men Days of Future Past. It was just magnificent. So as a movie fan, I am very comfortable with X-Men staying with Fox. I want to see Fox now follow that up with Bryan Singer, because I believe he's the key. But we've had a couple of just dynamite X-Men movies now. We had X-Men First Class, X-Men Days of Future Past. They're just on a roll. I want to see it stay there. I don't want it to come back to Marvel and have us have to sit around and wait for 5-6 years for another one to come out, and then to have the next X-Men after that wait another 5 or 6 years because Marvel's plates are so full. So, I believe that if they picked up Spider-Man or X-Men tomorrow, we would be sitting around till like 2019, 2020 before we finally saw one. That's the way I see it. Anyway, let's get to the next call.
This is Mick, longtime fan, love the show. I was just wondering, with the rumor that Shazam may take place outside of the Justice League part of the DC Cinematic Universe, do you think there's any chance that they will be building to a Crisis on Infinite Earth storyline in the future? Thanks, and keep it filthy.
That is an awesome theory. I mean, okay, look, but it's assuming a bunch of things, right? Let's assume, but there's nothing to back this up with concrete, okay? But my belief right now, based on the comments we've heard from New Line, based on the fact that the movie's being produced by New Line instead of by Warner Brothers, is that the new Shazam film is going to be outside of the DC Cinematic Universe. Every possibility that that's not the case. Every possibility that it will be in the DC Cinematic Universe. But let's assume for a moment that that I'm right and that some other people are right and that it is going to be in its own cinematic universe separate from the DC Cinematic Universe. Could they then be creating two different universes that build up to an Avengers-like event film, that we have a Crisis on Infinite Earth or multiple dimensions merging, different worlds, different universes merging, much like, Injustice Gods Among Us is a merging universes story, Infinite Earths, a merging universes story. I think that is a terrific theory. I think that's a terrific theory. Because you could have like a Shazam cinematic universe and introduce some characters there that you may not want to cram and jam into the Batman Superman cinematic universe right now. And then, all things going well, 5 years down the line, you create a merged universe film where an Infinite Earths or an Injustice Gods Among Us types of thing, type of scenario where, bam, these things. Like, what if, sweaty nerd territory alert here, what if the world, the universe that Shazam lives in, the Earth that he lives in, is a universe and an Earth where the Kryptonians never sent out their explorers to crash land on Earth 10,000 years ago? Because there's a lot of theories going out right now that in the Batman Superman universe, that Wonder Woman and the Amazons, that if Aquaman is a part of it and the Atlanteans, that all of them are actually going to be descendants of Supergirl, of Kara, crashing on Earth 10,000 years ago, or whatever it was in the comics. I can't remember if it was 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, whatever, years ago. And so you have these descendants of Kara that are now like these super-powered races of the Amazonians, of the Atlanteans, things like that. So like I said, this whole thing is based on a lot of assumptions, okay? So if they went that route, all right, what if the world that Shazam lives in is just an alternate reality where Krypton, where Kara never crash landed on Earth 20,000 years ago? What if? So you don't have Superman, you don't have, and history's been different now, so for whatever reason, Bruce Wayne's parents were never shot in that alley, so there's no Batman, you have no Atlanteans, you have all that kind of stuff. And that's just the one difference between Earth 1, Earth 2 in two different cinematic universes. In this cinematic universe, Kara crash landed on Earth. And so you've got the Amazonians, the Atlanteans, and you have Jor-El sending his son there. Or you have the Shazam universe where the Kryptonians and Kara never crash landed there. Jor-El didn't know about Earth, never sent his son there. You have no Amazonians, you have no Atlanteans, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point, there's a crisis where these realities start to merge and you got to bring these two separate cinematic universes together. Sweaty nerd territory. I know. I'm stretching here. I know. But it is a theory my friend, that I really like. I think that sounds really cool. All right, let's move on to the next question. Oh, and I should say, it sounds really cool. I don't think that's what they're doing, but if they do, I'm on board. All right, now let's get to the next question.
Guys, my name is Joe Vittori. I'm a long-time viewer. My question is about the third installment of the Hobbit movie. In the first Hobbit, Bilbo had a encounter with Gollum, and in the second one, he had a one-on-one encounter with Smaug. And I was wondering if you guys thought if there would be something like a scene like that in the third movie, and if so, what character or what type of character you think he's going to have this encounter with. Thanks for taking my question. Bye.
It's a good, I haven't even thought of it in that terms, but you're right. In both of the Hobbit films so far, they've been kind of highlighted by these key encounters, these key one-on-one encounters and confrontations between Bilbo and a significant other character. Obviously, like you pointed out in the first one, it's Gollum. In the second one, it's with Smaug in his cave, not in his cave, in the Great Hall with all the gold. But one of the things that I kind of said after watching the second Hobbit film, which I thought was even better than the first, I've liked them both. I like the first one very much, but I love the second one. Cannot wait for the third. But one of the things I mentioned coming out of the second one was it felt like the second one has slowly started to gradually change from being a story about Bilbo to really being a story about Thorin Oakenshield. Like Thorin Oakenshield, it was somewhere in the second film where it really felt to me like Thorin became the key cog in this story. And after watching the second film and going back to watch the first one again, I really started to see it's like, oh yeah, they've really been setting up so that Thorin is kind of the heart of this story more than Bilbo is. It's possible that Bilbo could have some kind of confrontation with Azog, the White Orc general. It's possible he could have some sort of confrontation, even with Sauron himself. That's possible. But I really think even more so in the third film, we're going to see more of the focus on Thorin. I think we're going to see more of that. And then it'll come back around to Bilbo. I think Bilbo starts this journey. I think Bilbo ends this journey. And if you've read the books, you know how true that is. But I think the third film is really going to emphasize its focus on Thorin Oakenshield and his development and his evolution and where his journey goes. But then it ultimately will come back to Bilbo again to move on from there. So if I had to bet on it, and I'm not willing to bet on it, but if I had to bet on it, I'm willing to bet that we probably won't see one of those key Bilbo encounters in the third film like we did in the first, unless it's with Thorin himself. That could be it. The key pivotal scene, the key pivotal one-on-one confrontation scene, when the first one's with Gollum, second one is with Smaug, the third one may be between Bilbo and Thorin himself. That is a really distinct possibility, especially when we understand what's going to happen to Thorin in the third one. So that's a cool question. All right, let's move on to the next call.
Hi, my name's Chris Patino. Hey, AMC crew. My question is about found footage movies. Just wondering, do you guys particularly like these found footage horror movies? I just saw As Above, So Below. Liked it. I thought it was more Tomb Raider than Paranormal Activity, but just wondering, do you guys like these type of movies? And is there a particular found footage movie that you liked quite a bit? Thanks, and never stop bringing on the filthy.
Thanks for the question. I got to tell you, man, I'm so tired of found footage movies. Now, As Above, So Below is actually a pretty decent little film. Better than I thought it would be. And it's a nice little film. And found footage has really become almost a genre in many ways. It's a style genre as opposed to a story genre. You know, story genres, you got horror, action, sci-fi, whatever. Found footage has kind of become a style genre, almost like animation. So you have live action, you have animation, you have found footage. You have claymation, you have stop motion, you know, whatever. But it almost feels like found footage is its own style genre now. So you can have action found footage movies. You can have horror found footage movies, you know, whatever. I'll be honest with you. I'm with some exceptions, I'm over found footage movies. I see that a movie is a found footage movie and I'm just instantly kind of, you know, turned off by 2 or 3 degrees. Now, it didn't stop me from going to see As Above, So Below, and I'm glad I saw it, but I think I would have preferred As Above, So Below had it been shot in a more traditional manner. Same story, just shoot it in a more traditional manner. But there are a couple that I've really liked. I have to admit, I like the first Blair Witch Project, which really made the found footage movie a viable option for filmmakers. And I actually, that original Blair Witch Project gets a lot of snarkiness directed at these days, but I still contend it holds up as a solid film. It was a solid filmmaking effort. I think it was Eduardo Sanchez who directed that. But I think it was a solid effort. I liked it. I liked the first Paranormal Activity. I found the first Paranormal Activity quite freaky, to be honest with you. But I think my favorite found footage film of all time is Chronicle. Chronicle is my favorite found footage film of all time. And Chronicle is one of those movies where I went into it, I'm like, oh my gosh, another found footage movie. Will they let this thing die? And then you go in and you watch it and you're blown away by it. And Chronicle is one of those films where, like, remember I said I liked As Above, So Below, but I think the movie would have been better had it been shot in a more traditional style. I think Chronicle was a film that partially worked because of the found footage style that they used. I think that worked to its benefit. Now, when they do the sequel, I really hope they switch to a traditional filmmaking style. So not found footage, but rather just shoot the movie. Don't make it a found footage movie. We'll see how that goes. But those are a couple that stand out to me that I enjoyed. The first Blair Witch, the first Paranormal Activity, but my favorite one of all time is Chronicle. But in general, I am over the whole found footage movie thing. I will give a found footage movie a shot every time they put one out. I'm just saying I'd rather them not do it at all. So anyway, that's just me. All right, let's go on to the next question.
Hey, this is Shaq. My question is just going for Phase 3 from Marvel Cinematic Universe. We all know that Thanos is going to be the villain. And my question for you is, not just the Avengers, but how many other heavy hitters do you think MCU needs to introduce for them to put up a good fight for Thanos? Hope to hear this question because I've been dying to try to get to you guys. But yeah, how many heavy hitters does Marvel need to introduce to fight Thanos? All right, have a good night. Bye.
That question will depend on a couple of things. Number one, does Thanos get all the Infinity Stones? Number two, does Thanos get the Infinity Gauntlet? That will depend. So remember, they don't have to follow the comic story here. They can say they got to fight Thanos in a struggle for the Infinity Stones, in a struggle for the Infinity Gauntlet. They don't ever have to say that Thanos actually gets his hands on it. It could be a big fight to prevent him from getting it, because if he gets it, all is lost. If they go that route, then they almost have what they need to put on a good fight with Thanos, in the sense of Thor, Hulk, Iron Man, Drax. I mean, you got a lot of these really big characters that you combine all of them in a fight against Thanos, you've got a fight. Now, you go in a story route where he does get the Infinity Stones and he does get the Infinity Gauntlet, then you need to bring in more help. And that's where you get into characters like Adam Warlock, Nova. You get more of these characters that you're going to need at some point, probably maybe in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, or I'm sorry, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, where they pick up extra help. Because if Thanos does get his hands on those stones, then Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, Captain America, Drax, that's probably just not going to do it. That's probably not going to be enough to get the job done, to fight Thanos with that. Probably nowhere close. And that's when you start to need to bring in other guys. But it all depends on what story route they decide to go. And because I think there's a good possibility, I'm not willing to put money on this, but I'm just saying I think there's a good chance here that they never say Thanos gets them. Because if Thanos gets them, he's unbeatable, right? Thanos, who's already the most powerful being in the universe, gets his hand on not one Infinity Stone, but all of them in the Infinity Gauntlet, he's unstoppable. So unless they decide to, lessen the power of the stone somehow, unless they decide to de-emphasize how exactly powerful those stones are and what exactly they can do, but otherwise they're going to need to bring in some big help. So we'll see how they go with that. All right, let's move on to the next question.
My name is Danny Ortiz from Lakewood, New Jersey, and my question is, do you think they'll be making a Fast and Furious 8?
I think it's a no-brainer. There was a lot of question after the tragic and untimely passing of Paul Walker about do you continue on with Fast and the Furious 7? And I've always said, yeah, you do. You absolutely do. And I'm glad that they are. If Fast and the Furious 7 makes disappointing box office, let's say it makes 300 million worldwide, which would be a big dive, then yeah, Fast and Furious 8 comes into question. But let's face it, Fast and the Furious 7 is going to make minimum 500 million worldwide again. Give me a quick second here. Let me bring this up. Fast and Furious box office. I just want to make sure I get my my numbers right here. Okay, so Fast and the Furious 6 made $788 million worldwide. All right? $788 million worldwide. So I think minimum it's going to make is probably 700 million worldwide. Could go as high as 8. And if that's the case, this is Universal Pictures printing money. And so they will continue to make Fast and the Furious movies if they're making 700, 800, 900. Heck, even if it makes 600 million. If Fast and the Furious 7 takes like an almost $200 million drop and just makes 600 million worldwide, that is still really profitable. It's still printing money, and you're darn right we're going to see Fast and the Furious 8. So as of right now, I have absolutely, no matter what anybody says, I have no doubt. I have zero doubt that we are sooner rather than later going to see Fast and Furious 8. All right, let's move on to the next one.
Hi, my name is Gabriel, and I have an interesting question.
Oh.
Now that Comic-Con New York will be happening in October this year, do you think there will be an Avengers trailer released for this year's 2014 Comic-Con? Thank you for hearing the question.
You know what? A lot of times people will ask me, we've dealt with questions recently like, why don't we have a Batman versus Superman trailer yet? Well, because the movie's 2 years away. And, 6 months ago we were saying the same thing about Avengers, but the fact of the matter is we are under a year away. Now for Avengers, we're like 10 months away now, 9 months away now from Avengers 2. New York Comic-Con coming up. I would go so far as to say I think there is a solid 40% chance, that we may see an Avengers 2 trailer at New York City Comic Con. I know Marvel's doing some big things there. I know they're going to be showing some new Big Hero 6 stuff and whatever. I think there is a very solid 40% chance that they will actually show us an Avengers 2 trailer finally at New York City Comic Con to start getting the motors running. So, or it might even just be what they showed at Comic Con. Because they showed a sizzle reel at Comic Con. Maybe at New York City Comic Con they show it again and then release it online for everybody to see. Or maybe they actually put together a proper 45-second sizzler teaser. That would be kind of cool. All right, what's next?
Here, my question is about Green Arrow. Back in 2008, David Goyer talked about making a Green Arrow movie script he's working on called Supermax. But since then, I haven't heard anything about the movie. Do you think that the show Arrow has derailed any chance of the movie being made? If not, do you think Goyer should go back on the project and include it in the new DC Cinematic Universe? Thanks, guys, and bring on the filthy.
For those of you who don't know what he's talking about, David Goyer had written a script that I was actually very interested in. It would have been a very different take for a superhero movie called Supermax. Now, if I understand it right, Supermax was going to be that for one reason or another, Oliver Queen gets wrongly, who is a veteran at being Green Arrow. He'd been Green Arrow for a long time. And he gets framed or something like that, or he goes, I can't remember if he gets framed and put into a Supermax prison, or if he, infiltrates a Supermax prison and gets stuck there. I can't remember which way. But he's in this prison specifically made for these high-end criminals, and it's called Supermax. It's a Supermax prison, largely filled with people that Arrow has put in there himself. So a lot of comic book villains are in this place. And then the movie is going to be about him needing to get out and how he gets out. And if I remember right, that in the script there's points where he actually teams up with some lower level B comic book villains to fight against some of the other comic book villains in the prison to get himself out and all that kind of stuff. It was a fascinating signed-in story. I was on board for it. I wanted to see that movie, but for one reason or other, it fell apart. And what I had never considered before is, I wonder if, Warner Brothers in conjunction with CW, deciding that they were going to eventually do an Arrow TV show. I don't know if that helped derail it. I have a feeling the movie just got derailed on its own. And for whatever reason, the powers that be at Warner Brothers looked at it and said, no, this doesn't work for us, and they decided not to do it. I don't think we're going to see it again. And as I've said before, I think as long as Arrow is running on TV, and remember, the TV universe and the movie universes, thankfully, are not crossing over. These are two separate universes, thank God. That is the right move, to have Flash and Arrow and stuff like that in a totally separate universe from what the movie universe is doing. That is absolutely the right decision. Anyway, I don't think they're keen on quickly introducing a Green Arrow character in the cinematic universe while the TV show is going. I think they can. And, there's that concern, won't it be confusing for people? I don't think people are idiots. I think people will figure it out, that these are two different Green Arrows. I think we'll figure that out. So I think they could do it. I just don't know that they're planning on doing it. So my gut feeling is, while I feel like they could easily bring a Green Arrow into the DC Cinematic Universe and not have a big problem with confusion or anything like that, my feeling right now is that they're not going to do that. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. Well, who knows? They're going to have Flash TV show. I got a feeling they're going to bring Flash in the cinematic universe, but we don't know that either. So let's just let's wait and see. All right, we got 4 more. We're already at an hour. We've got 4 more to go. So let's get through these.
Hey guys, I'm Drew. Big fan of the show. After the success of the Best Superhero Movie bracket, you mentioned a Best Animated Movie bracket, perhaps coming after Comic-Con. I was just wondering if that's still happening. Thanks.
The volume of that one was a little bit low, but he was asking, hey, with the success that we had, remember we did the Movie Madness tournament? We had the bracket, and I think I can't remember if we did 32, or we might have done, did we do 64? No, I think we did 32, the top 32 comic book movies, and we had you vote on them, and we had the Movie Madness tournament, and we came down to an ultimate winner. And we said we were going to do more. And we've planned on it. We've just been really busy. But yes, the next Movie Madness tournament we're going to do, and I think we're going to do a full bracket of 64 instead of 32, which will be crazy, is going to be Best Animated Film of All Time. So we're going to put together a list of 64 of the greatest animated films ever made, pairing them up by, we're going to seed them, pair them up by, number 1 against 32, number 2 against 31, number 3 against number 30, blah, blah, blah. And we'll have you guys vote. And we'll just whittle it down until we get a winner out of each bracket, have them go head-to-head, and have our number 1 animated film of all time. We are going to do that. It'll happen before the end of the year, so keep your eyes open for it. It is coming. All right, let's get to the next question.
Hi, John. My name is Sean Smith, and I was wondering, do you think there will ever be It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia movie? Thank you. Love the show.
Will there ever be It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia movie? I'm going to go ahead and say no. I'm not an avid watcher of the show. I've watched 3 or 4 episodes, and it's funny. It's a funny show, actually. The episodes, I don't know why I've never actually dedicated time to watching it. I've seen 3 or 4 episodes, but I've liked what I've seen. Here's the problem. Nobody watches It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I mean, it clearly has an audience, but in the grander scale, not a lot of people watch it. Certainly not enough people to support watching the movie. And if it's on TV for free and nobody watches it, why should we assume 10 times more people will go see it if they turn it into a movie? I think that's flawed logic. So, I mean, people can watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia right now if they want, for free on TV, and they're not watching it. So why make the assumption that if we put it into a movie theater and charge them $10 to come see it, that suddenly they're going to be interested? So while I think it's a decent little show, I've only seen a few episodes, but I like what I've seen. I'm a big fan of Charlie Day. But for those reasons, I don't think there's ever a chance that we'll see It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia theatrical movie. All right, 2 questions left.
Hi, my name is Boris. John, I have a question for you. With the Terminator Genesis being 11 months away from its premiere in 2015, and recently with Paramount announcing 2 sequels that are set to come out on May 19, 2017 and June 29, 2018. My question is, do you think that Paramount is taking a huge risk by releasing the 2 sequels without even knowing the succession of the first film? Thank you.
Okay, you guys probably had a hard time hearing that. I had a hard time, a little bit of mumbling there and very, very quiet. Basically, the question was, it just came out. I'm sure we're going to talk about this on AMC Movie Talk tomorrow. Paramount's announced already 2 sequel dates for Terminator Genisys. Terminator Genisys is coming out in less than a year. And the other day, Paramount announced 2 new release dates for 2 Terminator sequels, one for 2017 and one for 2018. And the question was, do we think that Paramount is taking a big risk and jumping the gun in announcing these release dates before they even have seen whether or not people are going to go see Terminator Genisys? The answer to that question is it depends. Remember, lots of movies can say we have plans for a sequel. Lots of movies can say we're going to do this and we're going to do that. But that doesn't cost them anything to say we're going to make another one. If Terminator Genisys comes out and it bombs, they're not doing another Terminator Genisys film in 2017. Now, if they said it was going to come out in 2016, well, then that means they need to start making that film even before Terminator Genisys comes out. So that's really putting their neck on the line. But as things stand, they got 2 years from when Terminator Genisys comes out to when they've got to meet that 2017 date, which means they'll have started some pre-production work on it, and they'll have invested a little bit of money in it. But the reality is, if Terminator Genisys comes out and it's terrible, and it bombs, and it doesn't make them near the money that they're hoping that it makes them, they can easily pull the plug. So is it a big risk? Not really. They're only risking the minimal amount of money in studio terms. They're only risking the minimal amount of money they need to put up to at least get some pre-production started and get things organized and get things in place so that if Terminator Genisys is a big hit and is the hit that they're hoping it'll be, they can then go into production 4 or 5 months later and meet the 2017 release date. It would be a much bigger gamble. It would be a much bigger risk if they came out and said Terminator Genisys 2 comes out in 2016, because then you got to be in production already by the time the first Terminator comes out. That's the bigger gamble. That would have been the bigger risk, the bigger case of rolling the dice. They didn't do that. It's probably smart that they didn't do that. So they can come out and say 2 sequel dates. But we all know if this film bombs, they're going to pull the plug on those sequels, really. So is there a risk? Sure, but they've minimized their risk. All right, last question of the day, and it has to do with one of my favorite people. Let's listen in.
Yeah, hey, John, it's David from New York City. Just a quick question. I know you said your wife was a fan of Guardians of the Galaxy, but I haven't heard anything about how she feels about the film. So could you get an answer and let us know what's her opinion of Guardians of the Galaxy?
All right, so the question was, I love Guardians of the Galaxy, and I don't know anybody that knows more about Guardians of the Galaxy in the comics world than my wife, and she knows, when she's sticking her head in right now. I don't know anybody that knows as much about Guardians of the Galaxy as she does. She knows more about Guardians of the Galaxy in the comic world than anybody else I know. And you all know how I feel about Guardians of the Galaxy. I've seen it in theater 7 times. We're going to go see it an 8th. Anne has seen it 6 times, and only 3 of those times were with me. So she's seen it 3 more times without me, which should tell you what she thinks of Guardians of the Galaxy. Anne loves Guardians of the Galaxy. She would leave me for Chris Pratt, probably in 5 seconds flat, which is fine. He's the man. Anyway. So yeah, she loves the film. Thanks a lot for the question. Well, folks, that will do it for this very different, this very unique, this very special edition of AMC Mailbag, where we just took all those phone calls. We got through 20 of them. It's taken over an hour. So thanks for hanging in there, guys, with me. And again, thank you for indulging me as we try these new things and we try these different things, and really appreciate you giving us the freedom to do that and to try these things and see what works, see what doesn't work, whatever. So by all means, please give us your feedback. I'm looking forward to it. Hey, listen, don't forget, lots of great films playing in AMC theaters everywhere right now. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com for your theater, showtime, and your movie ticket information. Don't forget, What we normally do is take your email questions, so send in your mailbag questions. Email us at amcmovietalk@gmail.com. We will take your mailbag questions on next week's show. We will also take your mailbag questions on AMC Movie Talk Monday through Friday. We're looking forward to reading them. And of course, don't forget, guys, you can find me on all the various social media channels. You can follow me on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. By the way, I make announcements about AMC and stuff like that, and where AMC Movie News is going, and special things. Like, I even gave out the phone number for our call-in line. I give those out first to people who follow me on social media. So if you want to, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, just at John Campia. So that'll do it for me, guys. Thanks a lot for following me today. I'm going to go watch some football now. Thanks for joining me. My name's John Campia for AMC Movie News, and until next time, bye-bye.